So this is the 0520 hours GMT edition of the KHOODEELAAR television channel being broadcast only on the internet. And we don't have any friends and we don't seek any friends. Those that might access this by accident or by later research are welcome to use the content and the data, but acknowledge the source. The KHOODEELAAR television channel is unique in three respects. It's original, it's world exclusive, and it is actively hostile to lies, liars, and perpetrators of lies everywhere, regardless of ethnicity, race, religion, whatever. It's the most universal platform that you would come across on the internet. This is Muhammad Haque creating the KHOODEELAAR campaign and the KHOODEELAAR television channel. And the name Baby Angel Geronimo needs a slight introduction to those who are watching this for the first time. Baby Angel Geronimo is the name that I gave to the alpaca, a member of the camelid family, who lives in South Gloucestershire in southwest England. This baby was born in New Zealand and he was raised by a woman called Leonie Walker, who foolishly, in my view, parted with this baby and sold him to a woman called Helen MacDonald in South Gloucestershire. Helen MacDonald is a former veterinary nurse who devotes her time in looking after a family of alpacas. She keeps them, and she, for some reason, brought Baby Angel Geronimo in 2017. Now, the reason why I call him Baby Angel Geronimo is because of the universal principles involved in his treatment by the UK government. Although he's only, to many people, he's only a Geronimo, an alpaca, but to me, he is an angel. I really mean that. He's a blessing and he is a witness. For 4 years, the UK government, central government department, DEFRA, targeted him for absolute lies and vilification and accused Baby Angel Geronimo of being ill, unwell, infected, and so on. Now, those who are familiar with animal world and animal kind of behavior and animal kind of environment would know that Baby Angel Geronimo could not be sick as the UK Central Government Department, DEFRA, claimed he was, because he was the best, he was in the best health at all times. And according to the woman who bred him in New Zealand, Leonie Walker, who spoke to the London Times representative or reporter or somebody who wrote a piece about Baby Angel Geronimo in August 2021, 9th of August, I think, she said she was sad to let him go. She said he was mischievous, he was adorable, etc., etc. And the fact is that he is a grandfather. He has left kind of legacy there in New Zealand where he has grandchildren. I shall be following up on how many other descendants he has produced. The Baby Angel Geronimo was treated in the most appalling way during the 4 years of targeted attacks on his health, his innocence, and the absolutely innocent determination by Helen MacDonald. And they accused her falsely defaming her and targeting her. And in one or two interviews, she said that she felt like she was being tortured. Now, I have been running this banner, Baby Angel Geronimo editions. I think I think just about a year. There was a break because I was in hospital. So, ac- accepting that break, this has been an ongoing program. And I'll catch up with Helen MacDonald in due course. But the essential lesson is that Baby Angel Geronimo has witnessed the depravity, the backwardness, the cruelty, and the stupidity, and the absolute lack of compassion by the regime that was fronted by the congenital liar Boris Johnson, who was in Prime Minister's post. And the chief vet for the UK, based at the department DEFRA, is a Scottish born woman called, or Scottish raised woman called Christine Middle Miss. Now, by following the lessons in the Surah Al Isra and the debate between God and Shaitan, I have given her the name Christine Evilness because she must be one of Satan's important followers. She must have confected all the lies that were put to the three High Court judges, one after the other, all of whom behaved like absolute criminal Satans themselves. They rubber stamped the agenda that the DEFRA had against Baby Angel Geronimo. So, all of these things were absolutely untruthful lies, inventions that should not be done by a state agency whatsoever. The United Kingdom is currently and was and has always been an active signatory to literally thousands of treaties, declarations, agreements, international treaties, agreements, etc., etc. And all of the treaties, agreements, and declarations oblige the signatory state to be compassionate, to be kind, caring, fair, all the rest of it. And in their hostility and treatment, criminality against the innocent Baby Angel Geronimo, they broke all of those. And they broke those brazenly. And they broke those with the complicity of criminally active, unfit for purpose judges in the High Court. So, Baby Angel Geronimo has witnessed more than any other individual, any human being has done. 4 years they targeted him. So, that is why we are carrying the banner Baby Angel Geronimo editions, KHOODEELAAR television channel, and this will continue and indefinitely because Baby Angel Geronimo's lessons and the evidence deserve widest possible airing, sharing, understanding, and dissemination and learning from. Now, in the papers, I can't comment on the print versions of the newspapers at this time of the morning, which is just after 5. Let's check the time, exact time. There's a 5:29 GMT, so half past 5 local time BST as well. And so what I'm going to do is to continue some of the items that I touched on yesterday in the last edition of yesterday's paper, but this one is the one that these are the two that I'll continue to kind of discuss again. One is the Sunday Times of last Sunday, the investigation piece written by Gabriel Pogrand and Jack Claver, and it's unmasked. It's the COVID reach list, which is they are discussing this amount, 7.8 billion pounds, that was given very kind of speedily to various companies that sprang up when COVID hit, and companies, businesses that were given this 7.8 million or whatever were claiming to be providing various equipment, drugs and surgical clothing and personal protective equipments, etc., etc. And all of these have become journalistically, if you like, in the public opinion, quite attractive because of the role played by a very immoral individual called Michelle Mone. Now, the spelling of Mone is Mone, but Mone in the English language, Moan, can be used as a dirty sound. And this woman has behaved in the dirtiest, most evil, corrupt way possible. Because she got the, according to this item in the Sunday Times, this is the company that got the money, PPE MedPro Limited. And the contracts were worth 203 million that the UK government gave them. And the unused PPE, that is the personal protective equipment, worth 125 million. Now, this is something that I have read before, and I'll read it again just for anyone who is watching this for the first time. MedPro is probably the highest profile firm that received PPE contracts because of allegations of its ties to Baroness Mone. The self-made multimillionaire grew up in Glasgow's East End, that is in Scotland, set up her own business after becoming redundant, aged 23 years, and made her money selling weight loss pills, false tan products, and lingerie. Now, lingerie is the kind of underwear used by women. And one of the women that she recruited, that is not mentioned in this piece, is one of the former girlfriends or wives of a Scottish pop singer. And she was selling breast enhancement or breast implants. That is why the Daily Mail mainly has been calling her Baroness Bra. But this reference to her as Baroness Bra goes way beyond her manufacturing of the lingerie and the bra. It actually affects her personality and character. Now, she was then alighted on by David Cameron, who was Prime Minister before Theresa May. And David Cameron, according to the paraphrase in this piece by these two writers in the Sunday Times, as a symbol of the entrepreneurial spirit Cameron's government was seeking to foster. And so he made her a conservative peer in 2015. Now, Cameron is a sleazeball criminal who has been exposed as a liar after he got involved with an Australian criminal and crook. So these, conservative politicians, I'm just confining now for this time being to conservative prime ministers and politicians in the UK, absolute sleazeballs, crooks, corrupt, liars. Theresa May herself was not accused of corruption and criminality just as badly as Cameron was. But her husband was reportedly involved in all kinds of shady deals. And of course, the expression congenital liar applying to Boris Johnson was invented by a former French ambassador to the United Kingdom, a woman called Sylvie Barman. Sylvie Barman has written a book and also has contributed several pieces to the weekly outlet called the New Statesman in London. And Sylvie Barman called Boris Johnson congenital liar. Let's look at the congenital liar a bit further. For those who have not watched this program or are not familiar with the history of the congenital liar. Now, this is in the Daily Mirror, 11th of December 2019. Now, this is December the 14th, so it's 3 years ago. And the Boris Johnson is a shameless, pathological liar who will let you down. Exclusive. Now, Peter Auburn, a lifelong Tory commentator, will be voting Labour tomorrow. Here, he writes exclusively for the Mirror about how he has become so repelled by Boris Johnson's endless lying that he will be backing Jeremy Corbyn in the polling booth. Peter Auburn, the time, the deadline is 22:27 hours, 11th of December 2019. Boris Johnson is a shameless and pathological liar. Remember, I started talking about Sylvie Barman. I'll come to that after I finished referring to these Peter Auburn things. Johnson lies about anything. He lies about his private life. He lies to his friends. He lies to his colleagues. And he has been accused of misleading the Queen. This is a man who is so untrustworthy, you would never tolerate him as a work colleague. You would never hire him as an employee, and you would refuse to work with him as your boss. If he makes a promise, he will break it. He can be guaranteed to let you down. Now that's Peter Auburn, but let's go to Sylvie Barman. So on the 27th of February 2021, the Times.co.uk ran this story. This is the one that is the headline that I've been quoting from quite a while. Sylvie Barman, yes, Boris is a congenital liar, and your country, the UK that is, has decided to scuttle itself. Now, she was criticized this week for her verdict on the Prime Minister. But France's former ambassador remains unsparing and unrepentant. Charles Bremner writes. That was on the 27th of February 2021. It's not every day that the ambassador of one of Britain's closest allies calls the Prime Minister a congenital liar. Sylvie Barman, who was until 2017 France's envoy at the court of St. James's, is amused by the fuss in London over her portrait of Boris Johnson as a clever but reckless opportunist with no regard for the truth. Johnson, she wrote in her new book, Goodbye Britannia, lies to embellish reality, lies as a game, but also as an instrument of power. A shower of Brexiteer wrath has been lobbed back across the channel This week, I've come in for the usual stuff. Without us, you'd still be under the Third Reich and so on, Barman says, talking in her flat on the river or whatever. That is the because it's a paywalled article. I'm not able to see the rest of the piece, but that's the basic piece that I have been referring to. And 3 days before that, the Guardian ran this piece. Boris Johnson, a liar who will blame Brexit course on COVID. Now, this is a piece that appeared in the Guardian 3 days before that, and it's written by Patrick Winter, who is himself not a saint. He's a liar as well, but uh, he's described here as a diplomatic editor. Sylvie Berman, former French ambassador, puts Prime Minister's handling of pandemic alongside Donald Trump's. There is a picture of Berman standing next to Boris Johnson in 2016. Boris Johnson is an unrepentant and inveterate liar who feels he is not subject to the same rules as others. Sylvie Berman, the former French ambassador to the UK during the Brexit vote, says in a new book. She also claims some Brexiteers are consumed with hatred for Germany and gripped by a myth that they liberated Europe on their own, describing Brexit as a triumph of emotion over reason, won by a campaign full of lies in which negative attitudes to migration were exploited by figures such as Johnson and Michael Gove. Barman, who served as the French ambassador to the UK from 2014 to 2017 and has been one of the most senior diplomats in the French diplomatic service, including as ambassador to China and to Russia, assesses the British handling of the COVID pandemic as among the worst in the world, alongside that of Donald Trump and Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil. She predicts Johnson will seek to use COVID to mask the true economic cost of Brexit on the UK economy. Well, that was 2021, but this is now already reality. Brexit is being shelved effectively. Johnson, she says, comes from an Eton and Oxford University class that believes they are entitled to use language to provoke. Describing Johnson as intelligent and charming, she says he uses lies to embellish reality. As a game and as an instrument of power, the ends justify the means. He has no rules. Asked at a Royal United Services Institute think tank event about her description of him as an unrepentant liar, she said he would not object to being called that. He knows he is a liar. He has always played with that. He was fired from his first post for that reason. In her book, Goodbye Britannia, she seeks She seeks to define the psyche that led to Brexit. She describes the partisans of Brexit as reciting a history in which the UK is never defeated, never invaded. She suggests a country that considers it single handedly won the Second World War, liberating the continent and deserving of gratitude. Referencing the more than 22 million Russians who died in the war, she says this does not disturb the discourse of the Brexiteers who peddle the myth that the UK liberated Europe alone and needs no one. She adds that France does have a debt of gratitude to the British, but it is right to remember that they were not alone, and you cannot live with a history that stopped in June 1944. The corollary of an England saving Europe, she adds, is a detestation of Germany and contempt for cowardice. The term is often used for those who allowed themselves to be occupied, not to mention collaborated. The British account of the Second World War, relayed in films such as Dunkirk, she says, led to loss of confidence in the European Union as an instrument of peace. She admits she did not believe the Brexit referendum would be lost by David Cameron's government, pointing out that both sides of the debate had told her the same. In retrospect, she viewed the defeat as the first crisis of electoral democracy and the harbinger of the populism that has been followed through in the US and Europe. David Cameron was always telling other heads of government that he would win, and he rejected any help from the EU countries. She told Russi, she said that if Cameron had warned the EU that he was going to lose, Europe would have come up with a new offer on migration. British ministers told her that they might win with as much as 60% of the vote. In the book, she asks how this country, whose influence had been decisive in Brussels, which insolently rolled out the red carpet for French entrepreneurs, and which Jinping had elected in October 2015 as the gateway to Europe, at the dawn of golden period, how has it undertaken to scuttle itself? She predicts Boris Johnson's temptation will be to hide the bill for Brexit under the COVID carpet, valued at more than 200 billion for 2020, almost as much as the United Kingdom's total contribution to the European Union since its accession in 1973, which was 215 billion. She says it is inevitable that the UK will struggle now to find influence outside the EU and has a Scottish independence referendum hanging over its head. She says she believes the European Union would feel obliged to open talks with Scotland in the event of a referendum vote to leave the UK. But that is not the official EU position, partly due to pressure from Spain. Madrid fears that the knock on impact among Catalan separatists, even independent Scotland was allowed to join the EU. That's the piece by Patrick Winter. And there is another piece by Peter Oban, well, that we have referred to. And there is another one by this Raphael Barr, or Bear, Raphael Barr. Brexit is a machine to generate perpetual grievance. It's doing its job perfectly, etc., etc. So we're not going to go any deeper into the Brexit because the Brexit is unraveling, as I knew, as all the truthful observers knew would happen. And there is no way, there is absolutely no way that any of the liars' lying promises would come true. Brexit is a disaster not just for one regime, it is a disaster for the whole of the United Kingdom. Let's look at something that I encountered in the 1970s. I was having serious series of kind of arguments with a number of tutors at the what is now the University of Law. It was called the College of Law, and it was sited at the Breams building, which is not far from Chancery Lane. And one of the lecturers, well, all of them were complete idiots, but one of the lecturers repeatedly claimed that Britain had never been defeated, never been occupied. This is what Sylvie Berman says in our 2017 book, but this is what this idiot said in the 1970s to the whole group of people he was talking to. I mean, the confidence in the face of this idiot showed that he was not only idiotic, but he was driven by evil. Of course, Britain has been defeated. And the defeat is not in the conventional sense. And the defeat is now catching up with the liars like Johnson. The defeat is inflicted by themselves now. Everything that Tony Blair did in the collusion that he did with the American President G.W. Bush has come back to hit the British foreign policy and Britain. I mean, severely hit. Now, the relationship with the Middle East, because of the money, is completely fraught with racist stupidity and idiocy. But it exposes the dependence of the British economy on the money that the Arabs have. I mean, the whole Qatar thing, the racism against Qatar, and yet the preparedness to go to Qatar. I mean, work that out. The racism against the Arabs generally, and the massacre of the Iraqis, and the complicity with the Saudi regime. Work that out. So there is no morality. I mean, Sylvie Barman is not the only one to notice that. There is no morality. And Churchill, Churchill was a liar. I mean, Churchill was responsible for at least 3 million Bengalis dying of starvation in 1943. And Churchill told his own son's wife to sleep with influential Americans as a prostitute in order to influence them to support the British stance against Germany. So, where do you begin? And so, therefore, we shall leave that there and move on to checking the evidence about what is happening with Shamima Begum. So, this is the one that they're running from the so called Scottish documentary maker. He's a spy, and they're running this thing about the. So, there is a piece in the Guardian 4 days ago, and the heading is Islamophobia from the likes of Boris Johnson must be punished, and this is how to do it. A new index would help the courts assess and punish offences more appropriately. The present system is failing us, says lecturer Suraya B. Let's see the full piece. Suraya B is an opinion. A new index would help the courts assess and punish offences more appropriately. The present system is failing us. Now, that's dated the 8th of December, just under a week. A House of Commons report confirms Islamophobia is the most common form of religious hate crimes in the UK. Specifically, 42% of all religious hate crimes reported to the police were attacks against Muslims. But genuine efforts to punish Islamophobia and Islamophobic attacks are so weak that the statistics on prosecutions and convictions are entirely absent. We know nothing about how police deal with complaints of Islamophobia or whether there is a uniform process across all forces. Meanwhile, Islamophobia goes unpunished and grows. This must change. The debate about how to punish it has been bogged down by the task of finding a definition. This may be important, but British Muslims cannot wait while scholars debate how to define what has long been an obvious and cruel daily reality. Community-based definition of Islamophobia based on harsh experience are ignored by a legal landscape that approaches prosecution and conviction through outdated methods and systems. What is the solution? How do we properly punish Islamophobia? Islamophobes. As a lecturer in cultural geography at Oxford University, I've used my research skills to draw up an index of Islamophobia to help police, prosecutors, victims, and analysts work out when to take legal action and how to map out the routes towards such action. Importantly, this is the first time an index to measure a hate crime has been proposed, and it remains an open project. It is inspired by the way crimes such as domestic violence are prosecuted, placing victim, testimony, and experience at the heart. Published last week, this index of Islamophobia is accompanied by a pathway to prosecution form, which helps identify the laws breached and scores each hate crime on the basis of intensity, intention, impact, and recklessness. How might it work? Let's look at some flagrant examples of Islamophobia, including Boris Johnson's infamous comments on burqa wearing Muslim women as letterboxes, the distribution of violence inducing Punish a Muslim Day letters, a headscarf being torn from a Muslim woman, and being called Shamima Begum in the workplace. With reference to Johnson's comments, his then position as Foreign Secretary contributed to a score of 10 in the recklessness category. A score of 10 was also applied in the impact category, as the comments reportedly orchestrated a 37%, 375% rise in Islamophobic attacks against Muslim women in the UK. And it goes on. Now, if we consider being called Shamima Begum in the workplace, an experience several Muslim women have shared with me, a score of 7 was applied across the four subcategories. An index score of 28 would enable a judge to situate the incident on the scale of severity, thus handing down a lesser but appropriate sentence to, for example, the Johnson case. Now, Dr. Suraya B. is a lecturer in cultural geography at the University of Oxford. Now, we shall be talking more about that and being called Shamima Begum, and we shall link that to the corruption, the corrupt existence of the post of crooked mayor, elected mayor, and the corrupt role by Lutfur Rahman, who is back in that post, and the corrupt role played by the councillors that supported him during the years up to the ouster by Richard Morey on the 23rd of April 2015 from the post for 5 years. And one of the liars that supported Lutfur Rahman throughout and has never spoken a single word in support of these schoolgirls that were let down by the Tower Council and who were not given the safeguarding children security duties that the councils are obliged to deliver, is of course Rabina Khan. Now, Rabina Khan is a liar who remains a liar despite the fact that she is now affiliated to the Lib Dems because of the baggage that she would have to carry as a careerist if she remains aligned with Lutfur Rahman. She has decided to try the racist route. And the liberals are as racist as Boris Johnson if not more racist. And she has failed so far to get a winnable seat nomination for the parliamentary election. Because when she was almost selected for a seat in the last election in 2019, just before the election, her weaknesses became quite clear and quite obvious to the Lib Dems, who swiftly, swiftly ditched her as a candidate. But then they gave her a job as a kind of aide in the House of Peers to one of the Lib Dems as a kind of pretext platform. But mysteriously, some of the Fleet Street papers keep carrying her pieces, full of lies, inventions, and pretension. The latest, most insulting one is the one carried by the Financial Times, in which Rabina Khan pretends to even have heard of Shamima Begum. Now, in the next edition, we shall be going into details about the lies by Rabina Khan and how Rabina Khan should be prosecuted for lying. Prosecuted, I don't mean it as a joke, I mean it as a serious proposition. Rabina Khan has committed a criminal offense by claiming anything about Shamima Begum in the piece appeared in the Financial Times in her name. And I shall be contacting the editor of the Financial Times, the Lebanese born so called Muslim woman, Rola Khalaf, and I'll challenge her to substantiate the assumption that Rabina Khan has any ground to write anything about Shamima Begum. So we shall be doing all of that in the later editions. This is 42 minutes long so far. Shall call this one to an end, this particular